Alright, hey Nick, this is Derek. I want to go through the droid with you real quick here. And so I'm giving you a folder. It's going to be called Nick Droid. In it, it's going to have a folder that says Droid Project, and in that basically has the Droid Puppet. Now I've eliminated everything you don't need, so all of my files are pretty much gone except for the one you want is the reference. So use that as a reference. Don't animate that one directly because then that'll mess everything up. But this is a reference that you'll create as a reference. So in Maya you'll create that. You'll pull that as a reference and save that scene uh, as a new scene. So add 1, add 2, add 3 all be new scenes referencing this one. Again, here's our materials. I'm not using any Photoshop files here, so I'm going to get rid of these because I simplified it and I just made a ramp out of it. Now I have these reference images here for you to look at. This is the color that we're going for. This is the actual icon of the droid. These are some of the eye shapes of Eva from Wall-E, which I used as reference for my guy. And so you can look at kind of how they use those. That image here was background reflection. So here's Eve with her eye shapes. So you can use that as a reference for your character. So this is a little guy here, and this is the color sample that you might want to use. But I created a simple ramp for it, which gives it a little bit of gradient from one side to the other. Okay, so here in Maya, look again. I will go over how you set up a reference. So here's your scene. This is a brand new scene. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to create reference here. I'm going to go to Create Reference. It's going to go into my Scenes folder because I have this set up as a project. I'm going to select the AA1, the AAA Droid Reference version 1, and create that as my reference. It's going to pull that into my scene. Okay. So I'm looking at the wireframe here. I'm going to go through this with you so we can see all the parts and look at basically everything. So when you pull it in as reference, it's going to be in its original state. The original state has shading with X-ray joints. You can just turn that off. Again, you can see the joints here. You can shut those off by going here and just turning off the joints. Okay. Alright, so I've got my droid here. Again, some of the most important things is to realize that this is just a simple IK setup. I'm going to actually hide my IK handles too because I can see them down there. Alright, I'm going to start from the bottom and work up. This is your master control. The master control, I have everything cleaned up, so all these controls only control the things that you really need to use. The master control obviously has controls for translation, rotation, scale, and it is the low poly, high poly control. So over here in the low poly, high poly, if I middle mouse and do my virtual slider, I can go down into low poly, you can see the edges, and I can middle mouse and go up higher. Notice that when we're in our low quality, notice that the texture maps are screwy. But when you go up into high poly, everything's fine. If we go up and look at the head, we have the same situation in the head. All I can do is rotate. I can rotate this head around in the right directions here. I have all the controls for my eyes. Down here is my low poly, high poly, and I have 0 through, if you go 0 to 1, 2, 3, so if I go down to 0, you can see that the eyes are obviously are low poly, and as I go up to 3, everything is nice. Okay, it does have some issues with the texture maps there, but that won't be a problem because we're not rendering in that. Okay, the head controls have all the eye controls. Again, all the eyes. So if you want each one's individual. If you want sad eyes, right and left, you can do sad eyes, angry eyes. Okay, you can do closed. You can make them blink up like a normal blink, like so. You can make him have wide eyes, so his eyes get big. Okay, so a combination of that and closed will give you squinty If you want to have them squint a little bit, you can squint, but then you can also widen them up a little bit too, so you can get different eye shapes, a variety of eye shapes by doing that. We have vertical close, so I can actually turn them long ways and give them more oval eyes. So I prefer to have him like active with oval eyes. When they're just square, this is more of a dead feel. I would prefer to have him have slightly oval eyes in one way or the other. We can either do oval eyes up. I think like this is more curious. I can't get it to move in increments the way I want. Anyway, just a subtle, yeah, a little subtlety like this maybe. All right. I've got my whole low pot, but then we have our antennae. So my right and left antenna, I'm middle mousing using my virtual sliders. I can bob his antennas around, so I want you to have that sort of thing happening. So when he moves his head, always considering his antennae, and they can move forwards and backwards. Okay, and then a combination of forwards. So let's say I have them bent forwards, and then if I also turn them to the side, I can get a variety of shapes. Obviously, got to be careful not to blow the geometry apart, but in most cases you can get a variety of shapes there. Okay. Alright, so that's the head. Now the arms are pretty cool. We've got shoulder blades back here that rotate around. Obviously they're all closed down except for the rotation value, so you can rotate them up and down and around the way that you want, so you can get a variety of movements with the shoulders. Okay, and then we have the ability to move his arm at the top, at the shoulder, at the here, not at the, this is more of a clavicle, and this is more of the shoulder rotation. And so you can rotate his arm like that. Of course you can go through the controls and see, my controls don't work so good here, like that. And what also is, we have just the regular rotations up at the top, but then down here at the elbow here, this is where you can then begin to rotate his elbow around. So you can rotate his elbows forwards, backwards, left or right, up and down. You can do that. No, I actually limited that, so you can only do it in this direction, so you know which way his arm goes. But then we have the extrude fingers, where we extrude out his fingers, so you can make his hands pop out whenever they need them. And then you can bend his wrist up and down. So we bend his wrists, so we can have some bend his wrist motion. Okay. And then his shoulder here. Good. I have you can bend his waist, so we can rotate his waist. You can give him a little bit of pivots in his waist. Okay. He shouldn't deform too badly. I mean, he should deform nicely. Then we have down here, we have his hips override. Notice that they're all labeled, so you can wiggle his hips and not have too much of a problem. If you need to wiggle his hips at all. And then we have the root here. The root will then give you the ability to move him up and down. And of course he's got sticky on his feet, so that you can move his legs around. Everything zeroes out. When everything's at 0, 0, 0, everything should be fine. So if you want his legs to move, you can lift his legs, move his legs out where they belong, so he can take steps and do all that sort of stuff. Now obviously he doesn't have heels and all that. It's a very simple setup. And then you have a master control to move this wherever you should be able to move him anywhere, and you should be able to scale it. If I have everything correct, everything should scale, everything should work as you're supposed to. One thing I did notice, we don't want to scale to 0. Actually, what you do want to make sure of is that this control here, that is your texture control. If this moves, It may cause a problem for your texture maps, but it probably won't. But what you can do is select your geometry. Well, you'll have to unreference them. Go into rendering, and this is where you'd have to make a reference. So you're under texturing, you're going to create a texture reference object, which will essentially create a mesh with this material on it, and that's the point that the material will be calculated from, so it won't move in space. Okay. I don't even know what that is doing. It shouldn't do anything because I have a ramp on there, so it probably isn't going to be a problem for you. Let's find out if I delete it. Oh, it's because I'm using a reference, so we should be okay. I don't have anything parented to the joints in his arms, but if you're going to have him hold something, then you'd want to be able to see his joints, of course, and then have something parented to one of it. Have an object. Have a locator parented to that joint, and then have another locator with an object parented to it um, connected to that, and then you'll do a parent constraint in the animations menu. Set constraint, you'll do a parent constraint, and when you parent constrain something, it has a weight, and when the weight is 0, it doesn't have any control, so it won't move with the object. But when the weight is 1, it will have the parent will actually be working, and so then it will move with the hand. All right, and so that's the rig, and so you are again, you're going to be working with it. Like I said, here's what it looks like when it renders. It renders nicely. Let me do a better render here. Renders really nice. I'm trying to keep it very simple. All right, and if we want to go Pocoyo style, and we do, I'm going to be making a. You can work with your backgrounds. You can set that up as what we discussed. Go with whatever you feel like. You can work with the lights. Make sure it's very subtle. Keep it very subtle and soft. But it should render quite nicely in the end, and you can work with that. Alright, I hope this helped. Go through the rig. I'm anxious to see kind of what you come up with. Alright, thank you very much, and I will talk to you soon.